Yo, we're here to saying back. This time, I just want to do a brief Amos Wilson analysis of Dane, Calloway, and the what's the other brother name? Kurimeo, Abraham, the Aboriginal, all you Aborigines community. I want to do an Amos Wilson analysis on you guys. All right. And for you who don't know who Amos Wilson was, he was a psychologist from Mississippi and got his doctorate degree in psychology, but focused his discipline on black people and the advancement in dealing with the issues of black people and the problems that we have in the black communities all around America. And he worked in the correctional facilities. He worked with a lot of black. His you should look him up. His information is out there, and all the books that he done is out there. All right. So briefly, I'm gonna read from the falsification of the African consciousness. And yes, we're gonna keep using the word African because you Aborigines haven't proven that we didn't come from Africa. So until you guys prove that, we're just gonna use the word African. But you don't like the word African? All right, we'll use the word Kemetic, the falsification of the Kemetic consciousness. All right, but no, seriously, let's look at what Brother Amos said. He says, European historiography functions to maintain repression. The European profits by the lies he tells, the false perception and consciousness he creates in himself and others. His self-esteem and vision of who he is and what he is maintained through the projection of his history as mythology. That's one of the functions of mythology, to maintain self-esteem. The European projection of history not only serves to drive out and repress truth, but also maintains the inflated European ego. All right. Now I'm gonna jump to African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order, where he says, okay, he says, here we go. Therefore, a lack of self-knowledge. So he's just he's talking about self-knowledge, self-information. All right, knowledge of self. Therefore, a lack of self-knowledge is a lack of self-awareness. A lack of self-awareness is an insensitivity to the self. But an insensitivity in the self is also an insensitivity to reality and to the outside world. Without sensitivity of the outside world and the self, we are left to blindly stumble from one point to another. I wanted to read those two to point out, first of all, that our scholars, our elders, have been doing this research for a long time. The fallacy that a lot of you guys who follow Dane Calloway makes and believes in is that the information that we're receiving about African history and African studies is influenced by the racist white supremacists on our culture. And it's not. The ancestor, Carter G. Woodson, wrote the book Miseducation of the Negro. The ancestor, Chinwezu, wrote the book Decolonization of the African Mind. Amos Wilson wrote The Falsification of the African Consciousness. Frantz Fanon, before that, he wrote Black Skin, White Mask. Francis Cress Welsing wrote the ISIS Papers. They all were pointing out that we are suffering from a miseducation and indoctrination that developed in Western culture to falsify our consciousness, to make us believe in a reality that does not exist. And if you did not read these books, if you did not read the history, you would not know this. So you guys would assume that Dean Calloway was telling the truth, was presenting you, him and Dr. What's his name, Muhammad Ali, was telling us the truth and presenting us information, a point of view that we never tackled before, that the elders did not address. That's the point that they're trying to make, that no one is addressing the issues and the problems that we have, and that is not true. Elijah Muhammad, they call him Honorable Elijah Muhammad, wasn't the only one who saw the fallacies in Western culture, in Western education. A lot of our elders saw the fallacies. A lot of our elders addressed the issue. But if you guys never read the books, if you never did the research, you wouldn't know that. And you would think that no one ever addressed this issue. But we've been addressing the issue. And we've been trying to deal with the issue. But the problem is, you can't fight an issue by educating 10 people, 20 or 100 people with this type of information when you have a system that's fighting against you, that is educating by the thousands every year, that's turning out their students by the thousands, the tens of thousands every year. But we're only turning them out in the hundreds, even if that. So our elders recognize the fallacy of white supremacy in Western culture dealing with black people, and they attempted to address the issue. I'm bringing this up because everybody keeps pointing to this, Frank Boas, University of Chicago. These people, they did create a culture, to try to create a curriculum to suppress, to maintain that white supremacy ideology, that mythology that Amos was talking about. But it was John Henry Clark who recognized their fallacies and fought to break away from their stupidity and ignorance to create our own studies department. So we can do our own research. So we can present our people with research and information from our point of view and our perspective, not from the point of view of the white supremacists. That's the difference that you guys are not seeing and not understanding. By Dane Calloway keep pointing out Frank Boas and wherever the other guys I ain't talking about, these Jews created African Studies Department. They didn't create the Africana Studies Department. They didn't influence nothing, none of the works that John Henry Clark did, that Amos Wilson did, Marimba Ani did, James Smalls did, Wade Nobles, Francis Cress Welsing, and so many our scholars, Naim Akbar, Tony Browder. They didn't influence them. These guys are fighting against the system, fighting against white supremacy. But yet you guys sitting here thinking that, oh man, they miseducated. They influenced by the Boas and all that. What you said, Woodrow Wilson, all that. Come on, man. Read and study the works. Read the works of the elders. How are we going to go forward if you don't read the works of the elders? That's all I'm saying. We are fighting, and like Amos was saying, we keep stumbling from one point to the next. We're not Africans, we're Aborigines. We ain't African, we colored people. I'm an American, I ain't. We keep stumbling from one point to the next because we don't have a grounding foundation into reality, and we believe in the mythologies that's placed before us by Western culture. We have to let go of those mythologies and embrace who we are. And that's the problem that everybody who's following Kurimeo, I can't pronounce his guy's name. He's following creating all these Aborigines. That's the problem. You don't want to embrace being African. because of all the negativity, the negative connotations that were behind it, that Western culture put on it. And so therefore you rejecting it and you want to grab onto something else. Facts, man. Let's deal with the facts. Amos Wilson. Great works. Do your research. Read it.